Ubisoft just confirmed that Assassin's Creed Shadows map size is going to be much smaller than Assassin's Creed Valhalla or even Odyssey. The first thing that Ubisoft said is that Assassin's Creed Shadows open world map is going to be about the same size as Assassin's Creed Origins. Now, it's not going to be the same as Valhalla or even Odyssey, because as you know, Assassin's Creed Valhalla is like the biggest map in the entire series, and the second biggest is going to be Assassin's Creed Odyssey, or sometimes, you know, players would just like to say that both of the maps are almost kind of the same size, because we have a lot of sea in Odyssey, but then in Valhalla we have a lot of mountains and forest and all this stuff. It's going to be existing on a more realistic scale compared to what we have seen with previous games, especially with the mountains and how the mountains are going to be feeling in this game. They really wanted the mountains to feel like mountains in this game. The environment is going to be feeling much more wider in Shadows when compared to Origins. But that's because Ubisoft really wanted the mountains to feel like mountains in this version of Japan, and also because the era's castles took up so much space, which is basically acting as a major dungeon playthrough of these games. And game director Charles Beniot teases that the castles in this game are going to be so large that it has its own level design. So it's basically like a mini map of its own, because the castles apparently seem to be so huge. And if you've seen this TV show called Shogun, you would probably know that castles used to be like the biggest part when it comes to this era, the feudal Japan era. And there were so many different castles back in those times, and all of the castles were usually located on top of the mountain. So in order to get to the castle, you had to travel through a lot of adventurous routes where you go through a very thick forest, which kind of looks like a jungle. And the wildlife in the forest is actually what makes the entire forest experience feel like you're really in a mountain. So he's basically saying that the castle is going to be so huge that you're just going to keep exploring all the different options in which you will actually take down a particular mission. And it kind of makes sense at this point, because he said that if you're going to be playing as Yasuke, you're not really going to be exploring all of those parts of the castle, because Yasuke is not like a stealth character. He's not going to be able to run on the roofs or climb some of the places that usually Naoe is going to be able to do it. So it's kind of a bummer that you're not going to be able to explore the entire map as how you would with Naoe. But Shinobi Naoe is a more nimble fighter who seems like she'll shine in the castle's environment. All the spaces should give her plenty of shadows to hide in, but if you do fancy taking the fight directly to your opponents, then you'll still have plenty of opportunities to play as Yasuke instead. But there's always remained this one question that everyone's been asking around. How is the parkour system? And luckily, I got a ton of information behind the closed doors from Ubisoft regarding the parkour system, combat, as well as the open world exploration. And if you're excited about the parkour system in Assassin's Creed Shadows, because I think you should set yourself up to change your expectations about this game. Because from the parkours that we've seen in the gameplay that Naoe performs, it does look incredible, and all of the animations that you see in the parkour system is motion captured. And it kind of seems like Assassin's Creed Shadows might have even beaten the standards that Assassin's Creed Unity has always been setting all the way high up when it comes to the parkour system. And something that really changed my perspective after speaking with Ubisoft and receiving a ton of information about the parkour system is basically related to Yasuke. Now, you guys might be wondering why Ubisoft showed off all of this parkour action, the stealth gameplay, and everything only with Naoe, and there was basically not a single parkour or even any sort of basic climbing mechanism. And the truth behind all of this is a little bit depressing, and that's because Yasuke in Assassin's Creed Shadows will not be able to perform parkour as Naoe does. This also means that Yasuke is not going to be able to climb on all the walls that's available in the game. Now, in one of the shots that you see here, Naoe is finally able to jump into one of the fences, which was previously impossible for any of the previous Assassin's Creed characters. And since Naoe is a shinobi, she's going to be the first assassin character who's going to be able to perform the best parkouring animations in the entire series. Now, first thing that Ubisoft actually explained is that Yasuke is going to be this massive, gigantic character who's somewhere between 6'5" to 6'8" in terms of height. And in one of the scenes, you can actually see that Naoe is very tiny compared to Yasuke, and the gameplay differences between both of these characters are going to be completely based on the characteristics of each of these characters. Now, the first thing that really makes sense is that Yasuke is a very huge character, and he's also coming from a background where he's neither had any sort of shinobi training, nor is he even an assassin or a hidden one. And since Oda Nobunaga, who is the leader of that territory, is actually impressed by Yasuke, since he was very obsessed that this man looks very different. Since Yasuke was a very unique looking man, and he was black at the same time, and there was nobody out there in Japan that looked like Yasuke. At the same same time, he was really good when it comes to combat and brute force, due to which Oda Nobunaga decides to make Yasuke as his personal samurai. That they're trying to stick to each character's role. So for the very first time, when you're trying to switch between both of the characters, when you're trying to play as Naoi, you're going to have a completely different perspective of the game and how the gameplay works. It's going to be more fluid. The character is going to feel much more faster, at the same time more agile. And Naoi is also said to be much more weaker compared to Yasuke, and her attacks are barely going to make any difference on tougher enemies. So the best tactics for Naoi is basically going to be to avoid most of the combat in the game. That's going to be a bit out of her league if the enemies are stronger, taller, as well as brute forced. Now from the gameplays that Ubisoft has shown, if you have noticed this one thing, there are different types of enemies, and most of the enemies that you fight off are actually samurais. Now the first samurai that you get to see in the game are completely armorless, and they're pretty lean and tiny bodies. And then the second samurai that you see are the basic mid-variant samurais who are going to be medium sized, they're not super huge or whatever. And then finally comes like the huge brute force guys who are super tall, super muscular, and gigantic in figure, which is very similar to what Yasuke is. And all the different types of characters in this game are going to be moving and playing in a completely different manner. And the same goes for our protagonist Yasuke as well, because Yasuke is one of those super tall monsters brute force character. So most of the people that actually love Assassin's Creed games for the parkour system and the movement mechanisms, I honestly think that Naoi might be your favorite character of all time. But then playing as Yasuke is basically just going to unlock this whole new feature of brute force, and you're going to feel the character's weight and strength in every single combat aspects. But apart from that, you can basically choose to play as whoever you want. Now most of the times when you want to get from destination A to B, the best choice to pick would be Naoi, because she's going to be more agile, and the way that she's going to move across the open world is going to be much faster than Yasuke. But at the same time, if you want to go ahead and choose more combat, if you're getting into fights and want to win the fights as quickly as possible, then I think Yasuke is actually going to be your best choice. Now we learned that Yasuke in Assassin's Creed Shadows is not only going to be able to perform parkour, but also he's not going to be a fit character in order to do a stealth gameplay. Now Ubisoft has made this very clear that Yasuke is a very huge character, that he can't even hide behind objects. Now say for example, you can see in one of the clips where Naoi is hiding behind some of the boxes. She can also hide behind plenty of things like grass, tree, walls, as well as underwater, which is a really cool thing that I loved about the gameplay showcase. But it seems like Yasuke is not going to be able to do any of those things, because Yasuke is a character who is going to be massive, huge, at the same time as an African male. So this kind of just leaves him as an odd one in Japan, who people are very easily going to recognize. So this kind of makes sense from a realistic standpoint of view. But then when it comes to gameplay, it kind of feels a bit disappointing. Playing as Yasuke is of course going to make a massive difference, because he's a samurai character who's of course going to be upkeeping the samurai culture, and he's not going to do any stealth actions, nor parkours, or even assassinations. But I kind of did a little background check about this whole situation of Yasuke, and it seems like Yasuke was actually expelled from being a samurai after the death of his king Oda Nobunaga. Yasuke ended up serving his son Oba Nobutada. Now after Nobunaga's son Nobutada died, Yasuke was basically expelled from being a samurai forever. So this just leaves us to a huge conclusion as to what will happen in Assassin's Creed Shadows. Will Yasuke be a samurai forever, or will the game's narrative give Yasuke a chance to become a hidden one and train under the assassins and become an assassin himself? But there is one thing that really disappoints me the most in Assassin's Creed Shadows. That social stealth in Assassin's Creed Shadows is actually getting a revamp, and it doesn't seem like it's getting any good changes, because they have now completely removed what is called as the crowd blending system, where the assassin blends into the crowd and stays incognitive while he tries to assassinate the character. Now Ubisoft says that Naoi, however, is going to have a lot of different stealth systems in the game, but crowd blending is something that does not support the gameplay mechanics of Assassin's Creed Shadows. And this is one of the biggest lackluster of this game, because if you take a look at what Assassin's Creed Mirage has to offer, because the basic foundation of Assassin's Creed games is all about the social stealth system. And like Altair's mentor Al Mualim said,
"The second tenet is that which gives us strength. Hide in plain sight. Let the people mask you such that you become one with the crowd.
Assassins always hide in plain sight and become one with the crowd. Now, it's not my words, it's the word of the Grand Maester of Assassins himself. And seeing that Assassin's Creed Shadows is not going to have one of the most crucial parts of being an actual assassin is very disappointing. Now, if you look at the previous Assassin's Creed games, one of the most important things that made the gameplay element much more fun and intractable in terms of environment is how you could use the crowd and the environment around you as a crowd blending system. Now, if you take, for example, in Assassin's Creed Brotherhood, you could simply just throw away coins and that's going to attract a bunch of crowd towards you, which is not only going to give you more opportunities for stealth, but it also looks more realistic and very cool in order to just make an escape after you completed your assassination. And all you have to do is simply just make the money rain and you disappear right into the crowd. Now, although there is a lot of backlash for Assassin's Creed Mirage, I honestly think that Mirage did an incredible job in terms of social stealth, from throwing away coins to using dynamic events in the open world. Like if a drunk dude just passes by, Basim uses those in order to blend into the crowd. So that's a really cool stuff, and I think Ubisoft has done an incredible job with Assassin's Creed Mirage, at least in terms of the stealth system. But then if you look at Assassin's Creed Shadows, I think this game has a lot of opportunities and potential for Naoway to have all of these different stealth systems, especially she's a ninja and she's also an assassin. So this of course makes Naoway a much better character when it comes to stealth action, and at this point I'm kind of a bit disappointed that they completely removed the crowd blending system from the game itself. And one of the things that really excites me is the recruitment system that we've already seen in Assassin's Creed Brotherhood, where you can help people in the open world and you can recruit them, and these recruits are going to join the Hidden Ones Bureau, and these recruits are in return going to be helping you with your missions. Now in Assassin's Creed Shadows, if you paid close attention to the gameplay reveal that Ubisoft did, you will actually come across this one scene where Naoway speaks to Yasuke about how they can use the recruits in order to unlock the intel that they're going to be getting for a particular objective.
Daimyo, Fukujama Castle.
We should go.
Not before we send our allies to look for him. He'll be difficult to find.
Now this could mean that the objective of your mission is placed in a location that you've never seen or been to before, so you don't really have much intel about what's in there. So you're going to be using one of your assassin recruits who are going to go in there and give you as much information, which will then be updated in your mini-map. Now rather than using Eagle or Raven like previous Assassin's Creed games, which was introduced in Assassin's Creed Origins, this time they're using something called as the recruit system, which I really loved in Assassin's Creed Brotherhood, and I'm so happy that they're finally bringing that feature back again. And the good news is that Ubisoft has confirmed that there is not going to be any damage numbers just magically popping out of the characters as you do damage to them. So this is something that I really hated the most with all the recent Assassin's Creed games, with Assassin's Creed Origins being the first game to introduce this horrible new RPG mechanism which pops out numbers as you keep hitting your enemies, which just took away from the immersion of how cinematic the game could actually look. And trust me now, this was a #1 deal breaker for me, at least, in terms of how immersion breaking this one mechanism was. And finally, for the love of God, Ubisoft has decided to completely get rid of the numbers that's going to be popping up, and it's going to be more cinematic and more realistic in Assassin's Creed Shadows, which is one of the best news that I've heard from Ubisoft so far. And one of the examples that players will come across is going to be the new dynamic weather system. Now this is not like any normal kind of dynamic weather system where it's just going to snow in winter and then it's going to rain sometime and it's going to be sunny sometimes. It's not that kind of weather system that he's talking about. It's the truly next-gen AI-generated weather system that Ubisoft has already worked on, and it's currently implemented in Assassin's Creed Shadows, where he further on explains with a perfect example where he says, we have a weather system that will affect its gameplay. Ponds in the game that were once swimmable during the dynamic summer season, the same pond or the same water is not going to be swimmable in the winter season. And it's not just because of cold, but there is going to be some natural reaction that's going to take place with the entire open world itself. And all of this is done with something called as generative AI. Now, of course, we'll get into much details as to what the generative AI could do in terms of upgrading this engine in a bit. But before that, let's take a look at what he had to say, where he says that one swimmable pond is now going to be completely frozen, for instance. And visually, we're also seeing a big steep forward with the series in terms of graphics. Now, if you compare the graphics graphics with Assassin's Creed Valhalla. Obviously, some people say that the game doesn't really look that big of a difference, but if you look very closely, you would actually see the game actually has a lot more details in the character models, as well as the NPCs that you see around in the world, as well as the vegetations that you come across. Like if you just zoom into one of the stone pillars, you'll actually notice that there are some very tiny grass that is actually growing out of it. So all of these things are very dynamic in nature. And Ubisoft says that all of this is possible because they have now upgraded their engine and they're now going to be using something called as the generative AI. And generative AI is going to be taking over all of the future Assassin's Creed projects as well as most of the upcoming Ubisoft games. And it just seems really amazing. So there are so many different editions coming to Assassin's Creed Shadows, and especially this time with Assassin's Creed, the edition that you're going to be purchasing is going to make a massive difference. Now, if you purchase the wrong edition of the game, you might actually end up regretting your purchases. Now, as you know, the standard edition of the game is only going to be giving you like a base game, which to be honest is one of the worst edition to purchase, especially for Assassin's Creed Shadows, because this game is supposed to be a live service content game, which means that there's going to be multiple seasons that's going to be available in this game, and each season is going to be costing you a lot of money. First edition that I would honestly recommend every single one of you guys to get is going to be the gold edition, and the reason why is because you're going to be getting an expansion in the pack, which is going to be giving you 2 seasons that will be available for the game further on as a live service bundle. Now, of course, what's good about this edition is that obviously Ubisoft did price the game like super ridiculously high, but at the same time, if you look at the value that you're going to be paying for this game, and especially since this game is going to be a live service, and if you're someone that really loves this game, and if you want to be playing this game for a very long time with all the different content that Ubisoft is going to be launching, then I think absolutely Gold Edition is going to be the one purchase that you should go for. But if you're just someone that really wants to play like the main story and not really want to get involved in the game with any further development or any future updates or seasons that's going to be changing on, then I think you should just stick with the standard edition. Now, the standard edition is not for the hardcore Assassin's Creed fans, because I know that most of you guys are in to actually experience everything that the game has to offer. And moving up next comes the Ultimate Edition. Now, in this pack, you're actually going to be getting a little bit of extra stuff, but then the price point for the Ultimate Edition is extremely expensive. And I don't think that the Ultimate Edition is going to be like really worth enough in terms of value for money. And in terms of whatever you're going to be getting in this pack, as you can see, you're going to be getting this Ultimate Pack, which gives you like skins or like a bundle where your horse is basically going to turn into some sort of a dragon, and you're also going to be having like some sort of realistic outfit here. But then the weapons are completely RPG-like, where your weapons are animated, you have like flames coming out of it. It's very unrealistic, and if you are someone that really wants to experience Assassin's Creed game as it is, as realistic as possible, then I think Ultimate Edition is going to be the worst purchase for you guys. Now, the final choice that's left out is going to be the Ubisoft Plus subscription, which is going to cost you $18 a month. Now, the stuff that Ubisoft Plus is going to be offering you is, of course, a lot of in-game items. Now, of course, as you can see, you get like base game, you also get like pre-order bonus, you get like season pass, you get like 3 days early access, and also you get the ultimate access. So basically, it has every single thing that you're looking for. And if you're someone that is just subscribing for Assassin's Creed Shadows and you're not going to be playing most of the other Ubisoft games, then I would honestly say that this is one of the worst purchases, because as you know, Assassin's Creed Shadows is going to be a live service game, which means that they're going to be investing like hundreds and hundreds of hours just in order to finish the standard edition of the game. And then comes the season pass, which is going to include an extra additional 40 to 50 hours of content. And then comes the season 2, and that's also going to give you like a couple of hours of content. And then Ubisoft might also be giving us much more content updates for future Assassin's Creed title updates as well. So $18 per month. So just imagine, will you be investing 100 hours into Assassin's Creed Shadows in just 1 month of time? Are you going to be binging the game all over and completing each and everything that you want to do within that 1 month that you've just subscribed to? If not, you're going to be paying extra for another month, and then it's just going to keep continuing, because there's going to be content coming up for the game all the time. There's going to be multiple seasons, and Ubisoft has already confirmed that live service game is going to get like at least of 2 to 3 years of content updates. So it's going to be a very huge loss if you're going to be buying the Ubisoft Plus subscription. So let me know down below in the comments, which edition are you guys going to be purchasing for Assassin's Creed Shadows? Or are you going to be getting the standard edition or the gold edition or even the ultimate pack, or maybe even the Ubisoft Plus subscription? And with that being said, I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll see you guys on tomorrow's video. Until then, take it easy, fams, and goodbye.